Thank you so much for being on my podcast, Katie. I'm really excited to have you here today. You are a person that has one of those stories that I'm just never going to fathom what it is like to be in your shoes. But I know there are a lot of people out there who have experienced what you've experienced, which is every mother's worst nightmare, losing a child. And not only losing a child to an overdose that I can only imagine comes with so much more complication and shame and guilt than anyone can ever imagine. And I feel really grateful that you want to be on my platform to share your story. So, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. And thanks for giving me a few minutes out of your day to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is Nicholas.
Yeah. Oh, Nicholas, that's his name. Yes, let's talk about Nicholas. Why don't you just start to talk a little bit about him and share what your greatest memories of him are? And yeah, what do you love
This is
talking
the
about?
longest podcast in history, then. I'll make it short. Well, yeah, my husband's name is Nick, and we had a son named Nicholas. My husband was like, we're not doing this Nicholas Nick thing. We're not going to have a junior. Because my husband, his dad was named Nick, and his dad's dad was. And when I went into labor, we got to the hospital, and the doctor on call, he's like, my name's Dr. Nick. And our nurse was Nikki. And they were like, you're going to deliver on the Feast of St. Nicholas. And I looked at my husband and I was like, okay, like this is a little much. So Nicholas came into the world and he was very wanted. He just knocked our socks off. I was in my third year of medical school and I joked, oh, the nurse can, or the daycare person can name our kid because she's going to be spending time with him. Ha ha ha. And he knocked my socks off. Just that was the end of med school for me. I wanted to stay at home. I was just blown away by this beautiful little life. And we ended up we're lucky enough to have two more kids, and I got to be a mom. And Nicholas was one of those kids who he loved running around in our backyard. We live in Arizona, so he was always like whipping his shirt off and jumping on the tramp. And he and his brothers loved to wrestle. And he was just a happy kid. And when all three of our kids went back to school, I got my postbachelorate degree and became a teacher, and I taught in our public high school. Nicholas was crazy enough to want to take both of my classes. So he took AP Bio from me and Anatomy and Physiology. And in my classroom, he was really shy. He wasn't the kid that I was used to at home. The kid at home played soccer and was really confident, maybe a little anxious right before a game would start, but he was just really in his body. And then in my classroom, he was the kid who sat in the back and wanted don't notice him. And I noticed in the halls he was very quiet too. So he had definitely a little bit of social anxiety, which was odd for me because I was used to seeing him. He made varsity right away. Things came really easily to him, but he was a very shy, like kind of sensitive little soul.
Yeah. So, is there any before and after moment in terms of like, well, actually, maybe I should clarify whether or not it was an addiction or if he just had a bad moment and it just went horribly.
Well, that's a good question. I've met a lot of moms since Nicholas passed who kids, they only tried something once and that was it. But Nicholas had a slow burning opioid dependence and he really liked anti-anxiety medicines like Xanax.
Yeah. No.
He in high school tried like pot and alcohol. We didn't realize how bad it was. He went to college. He got a D2 soccer scholarship. He went to Colorado Mesa and Grand Junction. And before then, he'd had a lot of injuries. So I just need to say that. Like he had injuries where they would give him opioids. And I think he realized, oh, this feels very good. In college, we started realizing there were some problems. He would call home and things sounded weird. Oh, last night I thought somebody was following me and there was some paranoia. And after a while, we tried to get him into therapy. Like maybe he was having paranoia from doing pot, or I mean, not that we're an expert on drugs. So, but then he crashed his car, and my husband and I realized like this is bigger than us. So that was the kind of the moment when we realized things are not going good. And it was about 6 years of watching him really fight that demon and not win.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry to hear that. It's just, it's terrible. It's really terrible.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm realizing on the topic of like drugs and the drug epidemic, if you will, is that it can happen to anyone, is what I'm understanding. There's actually this drug usage among a lot of young kids in my hometown, actually. So I'm born and raised in Norway, and I'm currently living in Norway. And I just moved back to my hometown after spending years in the US. And I've always heard that, like, oh, the US, San Francisco, blah, 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 so much drugs is terrible. And then coming home, I recognized that there's all these cases of 15-year-olds and younger who have big, bit like great drug cases on them. They're carrying guns and they have a bunch of money, and it's a whole network of really, really, really young people. And what they've also found in the investigation of this is that they're coming from all sorts of demographic. It doesn't matter where they're from, race, color, or the wealth of the family. It could be anyone. And I'm almost hoping that it's kind of bringing a little bit of solace, that because I can only imagine that people will judge immediately, thinking that, like, because as you said in your message to me yourself, that you didn't fail as a mom, but a lot of people will jump to that conclusion. And you can talk about it yourself, of course, on how you've been managing all of that yourself, because you're still here, you're still alive, and you're still fighting every day for your well-being. And I would love to hear, yeah, what that's looked like for you.
First, I'm sorry about that it's come to your hometown. I'm really surprised. I went to a grief group for people who had lost their kids to addiction. We went to one in Sweden. And when we were there, I was like looking around because I don't have a homeless problem. And I thought, well, maybe this beautiful country has figured out addiction as well. So, yeah. There's so much shame with addiction. And I think that's what keeps people who are addicted in the disease. And addiction is a family illness. It doesn't just affect the person who's going through it. Nicholas certainly felt so much shame and embarrassment and didn't want anyone to know. And he'd wake up and call me and say, things are going to change. I can't believe what happened last night. I don't want to be that person. I want you and dad to be proud of me. And we fed into that. Like, we didn't tell people, we kept that persona of like, everything's fine. Nicholas is fine. We're all doing well. And now I look back and I think, would it have been different if I would have told people, like, no, things are terrible. Nicholas is using, we don't want to have Christmas at your house. Because I don't know how to tame this beast. And I don't know if Nicholas is going to show up the sober Nicholas, or if he'll come and drink an entire bottle of alcohol or be on pills, and it will be a mess. Because something about addiction is that it's not just the person is kind of out of their head, but also there's chaos that surrounds them. It just, whether his car is being in an accident, or he's stealing, or he's lying, or it just felt like there are money problems. It just, everything was bad. And so I wish that we would have said more, because also at his funeral, people came and said, if I would have known, I would have reached out. I have addiction too, or I dealt with this. And maybe they could have helped. I don't know. But we certainly played into the shame. And then once he was gone, there was so much shame. What kind of mom has a kid with a pill-sized hole in him, right? I had to do a lot of deep work to figure out, can I forgive her? Can I forgive myself? Can I forgive Nicholas? Can I forgive our family? And a lot of that was going to grief groups and listening to women and men who'd gone through things that I have. It's weird. Grief, people who are grieving, I met a lot of parents moms who would say, like, oh, I have so much guilt for my kid's death, and their kid had died of cancer. And you're like, what do you have to feel guilty about, right? And they would say, like, I should have gone to this doctor, and it was just ridiculous, because you'd look at them and think, you did such a great job. Like, you were wrestling with this impossible situation.
Wow.
And then I could give myself a little grace too. Like, I was wrestling with an impossible situation, and Nicholas was wrestling with an impossible situation. There was a period when he was in the hospital and he was in ICU for 6 days. His brain had swollen from going off benzodiazepines, and which is Xanax. And he just, he like had this clear look in his face and he was like, Mom, I don't want this to be happening. And I was like, yeah, me neither. Like, no. And then you could just see like that this thing come over him and he'd be like, where's my phone? I need to call my friends. I need to get on my socials. I need to, and you'd be like, no, 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 come back. I need the other one. Bring the other one back. And that's what addiction is. You're going to battle with this demon and it won. And I think one part of getting through that is being honest and not playing the shame game.
Yeah. I think you're so incredibly brave and human for saying it as it is, just calling it what it is, and for recognizing all of the emotions that you're going through in all of this. And thank you so much for sharing. And I also want to, because I remember hearing when the whole drug epidemic came in this, it was the 70s, I think it was in the US, and it was almost as if it was systemic and it was very often in Black communities, especially in New York. And it was because they would get all of these drugs related to injuries, but there was no system set in place for them to get off of it. And I remember when I had a surgery in 2016 and I woke up and they gave me morphine immediately. And it was hands on an incredible feeling. And I remember when the pain started coming back, like shortly after, I was very definitive. It's like, I want that one. I want that one. And they were like, no, 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 you're done with that one. We're going to give you something else. And I remember how angry I felt in that moment because I was like, I know how instant that pain relief was and how easy it would have been for me to just lean into that one if that was the option I got and if that was what was provided for me. So I can only imagine that in a place where there's no system in place to help people get off of a really strong drug as opioids in relation to an injury, it just increases the chances of being in exactly the situation that your son was in. And it has nothing to do with being poorly raised or having complete trauma that led you down that path. It is circumstantial and it is, I mean, in many ways, I want to say that it is like a lack of knowledge on the consequences of using really strong medicine or drugs to deal with pain and injuries. I wonder, have you, I can only imagine that you've been going down the rabbit hole of all of this yourself, of course, because it's so close
Yeah.
to home. Like, what about how things are working in the US?
It's good. I have so many thoughts on this. So something you said is very real. Like Nicholas, he had like tons of soccer related injuries and non-related injuries. I mean, he was a kid who lived in his body and every time he was given opioids and even wisdom teeth given opioids. So he probably was on 15 different times before he went to college. And one time he broke his elbow playing a game and the trainer called and said, yeah, we can't do surgery because he's in so much pain and we can't give him enough painkiller. And I was like, can't you just turn the dial? Right. And I didn't realize that they couldn't give him enough because his tolerance was so high. Like he was using so much. And so 3 days went by and they're like, well, we're just going to have to do it under the maximum amount. And it's still not touching his pain. Recently, my dad had surgery in Denver at a teaching hospital. So one of the best hospitals, I would say, in the world at Anschutz Medical Center. And they removed his upper left lobe because of lung cancer. And when he woke up, they had him on a drip. And I said, my dad's 85. I just lost a son to addiction to this. Could we just wake him up and see if he's in pain? And the answer was no. And my sister had a surgery on her knee and she had used some non-opioid pain reliever and it's new and it's not addictive. And so I suggested maybe we could try that.
Yeah.
And my dad's surgeon was like, oh, that is one of the best medicines I've seen. It works so well on pain. And we can't use it at this hospital because we don't have a contract with that company.
Oh,
I know. And so my dad ended up leaving the hospital, unable to sleep without the opioid. I don't know if he's gotten totally off of it. And so I feel like we're so into blaming the person that's taking it and we're not looking at the system that is set up against them. And I know that there's been a lot of press on the opioids and not to take them, but still in 2026, hospitals are still pushing them. And yeah, it just feels like we have learned nothing. Nicholas died in 2024. And that year in the US, 80,000 people died of overdose, which is equal to one commercial jet airliner going down every day. And that's what we're okay with. We're okay with profit, it feels like, over people.
But that's just it, right? It's like when asking the question, how is this possible? It is possible when healthcare is a profitable business.
And my community is really big on the free market. Like Nicholas, when he was in school, they did a whole like semester on the free market. It was free market in politics and so like history and math and like every in English. And I was, why are we so pro free market here in the US? I don't know. And it feels like the free market kind of ended up killing my son.
Yeah, I can't help but feeling incredibly lucky and blessed to have been in a country as Norway when I had my surgery and to have nurses that are trained in Norway that got me off of that medication immediately. And I didn't need it. The truth is, I didn't need it. I was fine. I didn't need it more than that one dose right after. And then I was on ibuprofen and I was fine. So and that is probably true for so many people who suffered the same destiny as your child. And knowing that, it's just heartbreaking because I mean he was so young, and I don't mean to put like salt in a wound or anything, and but I can only imagine that, like, what a shame, what it's like, it's the system, it's not your son. It's yeah.
And people who are addicted come from families that are that loved them. And
Yeah.
in the US right now, there are a lot of homeless people. There are people in prisons who are all dealing with addiction. And I feel like we've just thrown them away. We're like, oh, they chose that. And that's the right story, right? They didn't choose that life. Like, who would choose to live on the streets? Who would choose to live in prison? And who would choose to live in the prison of addiction, right?
No person in their right mind would choose that life if they had a different choice, right? And that is the whole point, in their right minds. What with that I mean is that when they are sober and out and in control, that's not what they want. It's exactly what your son said himself. He didn't want that. But in the next moment, the addiction is stronger than his
Yeah.
will, if you will. And it's not even his own fault because he didn't have to be prescribed all of that. And also, who's to question doctors? You're never going to question the doctor unless you're in this situation. You trust the doctor that handled your son's injuries, and you trusted that they know the dosage that makes sense, and you trust that they are aware of the consequences of giving them that medication. But it sounds as if there's no accountability and recognizing when enough is enough. And yeah, who is even allowing this to continue? And that's the big question in the US. Healthcare is a profitable business, and that seems as though it is the reason. Because when asking any major question of insanity, the answer is follow the money.
Nicholas at the end was being prescribed the maximum dose of benzodiazepines, so Xanax, by a doctor for
Mm.
3 years. And I didn't know. And
For 3 years?
3 years. And I called when he had the swelling on the brain. I called the doctor and said, he was 24 at the time or 25. And I said, you cannot, it's on my medical insurance. So I'm telling you, he cannot see you anymore. I know there's HIPAA, but he had swelling on the brain. And the nurse was like, oh, Xanax is not addictive, which is not true. And after he passed away, we got a thing from our insurance saying that he was allowed 24 more visits with that doctor. And so I had gone to our attorney general and I'd said, I don't think this doctor is doing what's best for patients. And I'd like you to look into it. And he did. And in the end, he came to our house and said that this doctor was prescribing what is medically illegal. And it was the maximum dosage for 3 years, and there was nothing that they would do about it. And so, yeah, it's maddening and it could eat me up. And I feel like things like this, talking to you, is a part of the solution, just letting people understand that that lives are at stake. And maybe the more we talk about it and the more we value human life over profit, maybe that's how we save that plane load of US people going down every day.
Anyone who judges anyone in your situation might just be a surgery away from losing their child to an opiate addiction. And
Yeah.
that is the heartbreaking reality. People
Yeah.
could judge as much as they want and be prejudiced. Yeah.
Yeah. And kids try things. Like you look, I have friends, so we're in a lot of grief groups, but I have friends whose kids died of kratom. I don't know if you know what that
I
is.
don't know what that is.
So in the US right now, it's legal. It's a substance that can be sold in gas stations and in pot shops, and it's an opioid. I think Nicholas took it while he was in rehab. It was like one of the allowed substances. But the more the FDA is learning about it, or people are learning about it, the more that's coming out that it is just another synthetic opioid that is highly addictive and deadly. So so we just got to, you can see a kid going into a gas station and picking up a can of something that's supposedly um, a health thing. It's kratom, and they get addicted to opioids that way, or even just a kid who's just normally trying something. I just think this whole image we have of drug addicts as being evil and dirty, or well, that's what they chose. They chose this. It's not a choice. Like, let's have compassion for one another. And if you've never had an addiction, you're lucky, and just all you have to do is love that person.
Yeah. Even here in Scandinavia, because there's this underground network called Foxtrot, and it is someone is on that higher up and they're recruiting young kids as young as 11 years old. And what they're offering is a shit ton of money. A young teenager, what do they want more than anything? They want to portray some sort of power. They're looking up to people with power and they want money because money gives agency and perceives power. But what they don't recognize is the consequence of being a part of that entire network and the damage that it's doing to a tremendous amount of people. And what the police have been saying in these investigations is that their parents of these children are in complete denial. They are in a state of that this is not, you're wrong, this is not my child, it could not be. And they have all the evidence in front of them that is in fact their child. And it's like follow the money and you find the why as to how this is all possible still. Yeah.
I think of your country as being one where people are sane.
No, I mean, we have the system in place to be able to avoid situations like that with giving free education and stuff like that. But free education is one thing, and having access to free healthcare, even, and having access to resources that are going to grant you a really great life only goes so far when you have zero perspective and you're not even aware of how privileged you are. And that's one thing. The other part of it is that when you are so vulnerable as you are as a young teenager to just you're pressured into things, it's peer pressure, and yeah, the excitement of wanting to try something new. I mean, I remember being like 14, like trying alcohol at a party or just smoking a cigarette just because you want to know what it's like. And I looked up to someone that I thought was cool once.
Everybody else, yeah.
But they pushed it so far from being a can of beer to like a joint, and then there's this pathway that insane drugs. It's like they're pushing the limits so much and the parents are not even aware, and it's getting out of control. It's terrifying to see that even a country like Norway, it's very possible to go down that rabbit hole. Really, it really is. And I'm really happy that we're having this conversation because, of course, like, I mean, at least we're attempting to create a platform in which we can talk about these things and create awareness and share the fact that, like, this can happen to your child. It could happen to anyone. It doesn't matter how well off you are or how great of a parent you are. If the system is not in place to support a child in that situation, yeah, it could happen to anyone. Yeah.
And in the US, our system of Nicholas decides, I want to get better. You take him to a rehab. That it's full of very kind people with great intentions, but it's all about profit. A lot of it is about profit. We never found a rehab that was very helpful.
Yeah.
And he spent a lot of time getting bounced around. Like he'd lose his bed because our insurance wouldn't pay, but our insurance would call and say, "Oh no, we're willing to pay. They need to supply X, Y, or Z." And then by the time we call the rehab, they'd say, "Well, too late. We already gave his bed away. Somebody's willing to pay." So yeah, it breaks your heart. It just breaks your heart.
Oh my gosh. So you said he died in 20 and now it's 2026. So it's been only 2 years since you lost your child at 25 years old to to an opioid addiction. How? Just how, Katie? How are you doing?
My life is different, right? I'm never going to be the same person. I mean, how do you move on when you've got this beautiful person for 25 years and they're suddenly gone? I'm really blessed that I have two other boys and a husband, and we were going to Al Anon, which is a support group for people who love somebody with addiction. And I learned a lot of really good tools there. When Nicholas passed, I sat down and thought, this is life or death for me. And something in me decided I wanted to live. And I think it has to do with my boys. And so I just started figuring out, like, what do people do? Has this ever been done? Like, I knew logically, yes, moms lose their kids, but I couldn't fathom like how you moved through this. So I got lots of books. I joined every grief group I could online and in person. My husband and I are both scientists, so I was like, as a scientist, I have to figure this out. And right away I learned it's never going to be better. And Nicholas is unless I can get him back.
Yeah.
It's Billy Bob Thornton says, because he lost his brother, that anytime he will be 50% happy and 50% sad. And that was really reassuring to hear, like very depressing. Oh, you're never going to be happy again. But that's how I feel, and it's real. And at least it gives me a pathway to move forward. I started journaling. I had never journaled before. And I did because, hey, this is what people say helps. As I was journaling, it opened me up to feeling close to Nicholas, trying to remember him as I'm writing things down. I started writing bad sentences with terrible grammar, and I would call it a poem, and I would post it on the internet. And it was like freedom, right? Because I could tell the world, hey, I lost my son, and your world is not as good without him in it. And I could admit to the world, hey, he had an addiction, and go ahead and judge, but I'm going to have to live in this new space, and I'm claiming this new space.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I've met a lot of grieving families who are doing okay, and they've kind of shown me a path through this or with this. And I've met a lot of grieving families who are not doing okay and who either haven't made it or I don't know how they're going to make it.
Yeah. My goodness. I'm really happy to hear that you and your husband are staying together. Can you talk a little bit about what that cooperation have been like ever since he passed?
Let me start with before, because
Okay,
I
yeah.
think the harder part was before. Like, how do you co-parent and love this other person when you're watching your kid destroy their life? And that was a really hard time in our marriage. We were doing a lot of bickering and just picking on each other because we're both logical. And we'd say, like, have you told him this? Let's explain this again to him. Or let's try this new technique, or I got a workbook and you're not working hard enough at that workbook. And once Nicholas was gone, we were just sitting in rubble. The closest I'm ever going to be to Nicholas is through his dad and his brothers. And it's afforded us a kind of tenderness with one another, with the other three, that I know that what I went through, and I don't want that same pain for them. And I can't take it away from them, but I can give them a little bit more kindness. And so I think all of us are a little bit more gentle with one another. Um, Before Nicholas passed, I think I was really concerned with fairness and like, oh, I did this much housework and you need to do this much. And now I just see like we're all really trying our hardest.
Yeah. And it looks differently to all of you, right?
Yeah. And what's important?
That is probably one of the things that puts everything in perspective, right? When you're in a situation like that, you really recognize what is truly important, which might get lost in translation sometimes when life is just ordinary.
Yeah. Our both of our other two sons are in grad schools and like at really prestigious grad schools, and people are like, you should be so proud. Look at what a great job you've done.
Something that came to mind is that it's just been a World Cup and Norway had so much
Oh,
attention during the World Cup. So the captain of the team, his dad was interviewed, and the interviewer asked him, "You must be so proud of your child. Aren't you proud of your child?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm proud of my child because of the man that he is, but he doesn't have to play in the Premier League or be in the World Cup in order for me to be proud of him. I am proud of the man that I raised." It's not because they're in prestige school that you're proud of your children. You're proud of your children because of the men that they are.
and how Norway played was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
We're all like, go Norway. So yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing being Norwegian this summer during the
Yeah.
World Cup. I must say, I've never been more proud. Yeah. No, but it just goes to show that where the focus and the attention on people who are telling you are proud because of this accomplishment, as opposed to the focus is on what school they are, what status they're having, what opportunities that is giving, but nobody is talking about what kind of individuals they are becoming.
And I wish we could have gotten Nicholas clean. I would have been more proud of that than anything. So I hope that if people who are struggling with addiction are listening, I think that there's so much shame about the things that people do under the influence or to get their drugs, stealing and lying. And I just hope they realize just at least this mom would have been so proud of her son. Like it would have been like better than him going to the Ivy League schools or better than the winning the World Cup. Like fighting that dragon to me is just that comes with a lot of integrity. And so I just hope that people who have addiction can find a little bit of pride and know that they're worth fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're all worthy of love and deserving of love. And being a Christian, the scripture is saying that you never had to earn any of that. You were already loved. And I think sometimes that gets lost in translation, or we forget to acknowledge the fact that none of us were a mistake and we were all very much intentional and we're all very much loved on an equal level. And the world doesn't look like that is true. But on an individual level, I know that it's true.
And we have to earn it.
Yeah.
It's given.
It is a given.
Yeah.
I really wonder, Katie, like, what are, just because I can only imagine that your life is very much day by day. So, what are some things that give you joy and some things that really makes it worthwhile, just in terms of things that you do in your everyday life that you feel is enriching your life in a very, very hard situation?
Can I ask you the same? Can you answer first?
Yeah, I can. I love getting to do the things that I feel like I'm really good at doing. When I lean into my creativity and allow for more space, the less hustle I do and the more I walk in nature. Like just earlier, I came home from work. I've been in an office all day and I only work part-time, and that's conscious because I want to have time to do creative stuff. I want to do that because it gives me so much more. And when I came home, I had a headache and I just was like, I want to go for a walk. And I went for a walk in nature. And yesterday I went for a run and I ran into two moose. And it's like
That's so well.
such an enriched moment. And I've been doing this little happiness is series lately on my Instagram story. And what I'm doing is just looking at every little piece of things that are like tiny moments, all these small little things that I do every day that just gives happiness. Everything from smelling the flowers to seeing strawberries grow in the gardens to the apple growing in the trees to the blueberries in the fields behind my house to yeah, the moose that I ran into and to all of the love that I'm receiving from my family, seeing my nieces grow up, beautiful little girls with so much curiosity in life. And all of these little things just makes me so happy.
Yes, that's beautiful. I feel like that's a sign too. So I've become way more woo-woo. But yeah, living in the moment. I think living in the moment because if you're not, if you're living for the future, it's going to be terrible because Nicholas is not going to be in it. And if I'm living in the past, I'm like reliving it. But living in the moment helps. So art is has become crucial to me, and writing poems and feeling like Nicholas is there and noticing things, like you said, like
Yeah.
being in nature. Obviously, I try to, um, something in LIT, which is Love in the Trenches, which is a support group for people who've lost somebody in grief. They talk about metabolizing grief and that you have to move it through your body. And so my husband and I move every day, whether it's walking with the dogs or running with the dogs, but that keeps you kind of focused too. And journaling has been very helpful, and being in community. Every grief book says that I need my community, and it's the one thing that I don't want to do because I'm too proud and I have a lot of shame. And when reaching out and telling people, hey, can you go to lunch with me, or can I help you set up your classroom? It's not for you, it's really for me, because community means a lot. The other day, we got in the car, and our car it will tell you when people are around. And my husband said, look there. And our car thought there was a person standing right next to the car. And so I took a video of what it thought that was there, and that there was nothing there. And I don't know. So noticing things, like maybe your logical brain will say that was like dust, but I need that. I need to believe that maybe there's something else out there, and that
Yeah.
if I'm living in the moment and I can see, maybe Nicholas can nudge something.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. There was a news article that came out after the World Cup, or as a result of the World Cup, the hotline for suicide prevention, everything that has to do with helplines, has drastically decreased during the World Cup. And mind you, during the World Cup, there's been a massive change in community, especially in Norway. I have never in my life seen 100,000 to 150,000 people gather outside of the castle in Oslo. But the World Cup made that happen. And all of this to say that importance of community. When the volume on the hotlines are drastically decreasing as a result of community, it goes to show how important community is. And I completely understand that is a place of solace for you in a time when you're grieving.
To your point, we do body pump, which is a Les Mills thing. I don't know if you know about it, but our instructor wore your flag and claims to be you. And she would, everything, she'd be like, whoa, whoa. So I don't know, maybe we all get a little piece of your community too, right?
None of us knew that the whole road thing was going to happen during the games. And when it did, everyone just blew their mind. And then Norway just took over Boston, New York, and everywhere you would see it. And when they came home, we were probably the only country to welcome home our players. We didn't even win any medals or anything like that, but we really won the best summer of all. It was 28 years since last time we'd been in a World Cup. And who knew it meant this much to so many non-football enthusiasts even? And I'm really happy to have seen it with my own eyes and to be able to be a part of that time of history.
I guess one of your soccer superstars came home from the US with a stuffed raccoon. And I just hope you know, not everybody here has stuffed raccoons.
Yeah, I mean, we have stuffed animals in Norway, not so much a stuffed raccoon, but I mean, it's iconic. I love him. He is such a good example of what it means to be a great image of what masculinity can look like in the world of Andrew Tate's. I'm really happy that Holland represents Norway and healthy masculinity, and I'm really, really proud. I think that is, yeah, I think it's beautiful. I think it's a great image of what it looks like to be a man. Bringing you back to community and to also just be yourself unapologetically like he is too. He's just showing up exactly who he is, and I think it's incredibly liberating. And I'm really happy to see that there are men today that looks up to people like him. I think
And
that
a
that's
lot of
great.
people do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
finally healthy men to look up to, someone that values marriage and commitment, someone who wants to retire on a farm and have cows and plow.
Fun.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with what kind of values you were brought up in, of course, and what kind of values you bring with you. And thank goodness he's portraying it to the world. I think that's beautiful. Not only him, all of those players on that team is incredible in that sense. To move forward, of course, I can't speak to your grief at all, but I really do admire what you're doing. I admire your vulnerability and your honesty, and I think it's brave. I think it's so cool that you're here and you're talking about this, and that we can laugh about a raccoon holding a vodka bottle or whatever it was, and soccer and rowing, and we can row together. I think that's beautiful, and I'm really grateful that you're here and that I can share this conversation with you and this moment with you. So thank you so much for being here, Katie.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to talk about?
If you want to remind people that my book, do you want to see a picture of it? Because I just
Absolutely.
is out
The
and
trimester of grief.
yeah. So it's available it's on pre-order and it has some of my poems, but most of my journals in it. And it will come out on October 6th, but you can order it now anywhere books are sold.
I just wrote it down because I definitely want to pre-order that book. Yeah, it would be a great joy and a pleasure to support you on your journey, Katie. Thank you so, so much for being here. I'm really grateful.